In a revelation that rocked the monarchy to its core, King Charles finally broke his silence, revealing the real reason behind his explosive split from Princess Diana. It wasn't just Camilla. It was something far deeper. Years of emotional suffocation, institutional pressure, and an unspoken war between duty and love. The confession sent shockwaves across the palace, but it was Princess Anne's emotional collapse that truly stunned the nation. Known for her stoicism, Anne reportedly broke down upon hearing her brother's truth, a truth she feared had been buried forever. This wasn't just a royal confession. It was a reckoning decades in the making. The confession that shook the royals. The hush of Buckingham Palace shattered like glass when King Charles finally spoke the unthinkable. His voice, steady but laced with regret, cut through decades of carefully guarded silence. Whether it was in what he thought was private or a leaked moment, his words reverberated around the world. The reason he left Diana was far more painful and complex than anyone imagined. Naturally, the public was stunned. Why now? Became the question on everyone's lips. What compelled him to unearth this pain after all these years? Inside those grand corridors, the shock landed hardest on someone no one expected. Princess Anne, famed for her composure and unwavering loyalty, broke down in tears. Known as a model of dignity rather than drama, Anne's emotional collapse sent ripples through royal circles. For her, this wasn't just a headline, it was a reckoning with years of hidden grief, guilt, and disappointment. This confession wasn't simply another royal reveal. It was more than a story. It was the moment a family shattered its silence. King Charles's words lifted a lid on a world built on duty. Duty that had buried pain beneath protocol. With that admission, Anne's tears were more than emotion. They were the breaking point of an unspoken agreement that royalty should never reveal its wounds, only hide them, the truth that was never told. At the heart of King Charles's confession lay a truth that few ever believed would be spoken aloud. It wasn't just about Camilla, as many had assumed for decades. No, it went deeper, into the very foundation of the marriage between Charles and Diana. A relationship not built on betrayal alone, but on suffocation, on silent sadness, on two people trapped in roles that neither of them could escape. Charles described his time with Diana not with anger, but with remorse. He admitted they were emotionally incompatible from early on. He spoke of long, painful silences between them, of missed connections, of moments where he felt like a stranger in his own marriage. "We were never allowed to be real," he said. And in that sentence, decades of speculation suddenly made sense. He confessed to feeling trapped, not just by the marriage, but by the monarchy itself. A machine built on tradition, on image, on duty above desire. "The institution doesn't ask if you're happy," Charles reportedly said. "It asks if you're compliant." The pressure to perform, to smile for cameras while bleeding inside, had torn them apart long before the world knew. What stunned listeners the most wasn't just the honesty. It was what he revealed about Diana's pain, that she had been deeply unhappy, that behind her radiance was a soul screaming for connection, for freedom, for real love. And while the world adored her, Charles saw the version few did, vulnerable, scared, isolated. That admission reframed their entire history. It wasn't a story of a villain and a victim. It was a tragedy of two people who could never find peace within the cage they were both born into. Charles's words didn't excuse his actions, but they did complicate the narrative. And for some, That complexity felt more honest than anything the palace had ever offered before. His confession left lingering questions in the air. Was love ever truly possible under royal obligation? Did either of them stand a chance? And more hauntingly, what would have happened if they had both been free to choose? This wasn't just a truth. It was a reckoning, one that now demanded the world and the monarchy take a hard look in the mirror. Anne's hidden loyalty to Diana. To the public eye, Princess Anne and Princess Diana seemed worlds apart, one stoic and duty-bound, the other emotional and free-spirited. Their interactions were rarely warm in public, often interpreted as distant or even cold. But what most didn't see was the private layer to their relationship, one that wasn't built on closeness or sisterly affection, but on a quiet understanding of what it meant to survive the weight of the crown. Behind palace walls, Anne quietly respected Diana's struggle. While she didn't always agree with how Diana handled royal pressures, she understood the emotional toll it took. Anne, too, had battled the suffocating expectations of royal life. She knew what it meant to be constantly judged, constantly expected to smile while privately bearing enormous personal pain. And so, even if she didn't say it aloud, she admired Diana's strength. Those closest to Anne say she often defended Diana in private conversations, especially when others within the firm criticized her. She saw the unfairness, the endless press scrutiny, the lack of emotional support, the loneliness, and more importantly, she saw Diana's devotion as a mother. Anne, a mother herself, knew the challenges of parenting under constant watch. Diana had tried, desperately, to give her boys a normal life amidst the most abnormal of circumstances. Anne never forgot that. So when Charles confessed, when he shifted the focus from a messy love triangle to the deeper institutional failings that crushed both him and Diana, Anne was hit hard. It brought back memories she had kept locked away, of moments when she saw Diana walking the palace halls alone, of times she sensed her despair but didn't reach out, of the silence they both shared, and the unspoken support they could never fully give each other. Anne's tears weren't just about Diana. They were about what could have been, about a system that consumed one of their own and left others to live with the guilt. They were about loyalty, both to the institution she has always defended and to a woman she respected, perhaps more than she ever admitted. And in that emotional storm, Anne wasn't just mourning Diana's past, she was grieving her own role in it. Family meeting fallout. What was supposed to be a formal debrief quickly unraveled into something far more human. The royal family, usually buttoned up and composed behind palace doors, gathered for a closed-door meeting shortly after King Charles's confession began to make headlines. But what unfolded was not a discussion about public relations. It was a raw, emotional collision decades in the making. Princess Anne entered the room already holding back tears. She wasn't just a sister that day, she was a woman remembering her friend, a fellow royal who had been chewed up by the very institution they were born into. As soon as the doors closed, she turned to Charles. Her words weren't rehearsed or filtered through royal etiquette. They were pure emotion. "She deserved better," she said, her voice shaking, her eyes filled with unshed tears. King Charles didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He just stood there, visibly aged not just by time, but by guilt. It was the kind of moment the public would never see, but those in the room would never forget. William and Harry, long divided by royal duty and personal battles, stood quietly on opposite ends of the room. For once, they looked almost identical, not in appearance, but in emotion. Their pain was mirrored. Their silence spoke volumes. They were no longer boys caught in a scandal. They were men, carrying the weight of a mother's legacy and a father's truth. Finally spoken, too late. Camilla, now queen consort, remained in the background. She neither spoke nor cried. Some described her as composed, others as disconnected. But no one truly knew what she was feeling in that moment. She was at the center of the storm, yet completely alone in it. What made this meeting different was what didn't happen. No protocols, no palace aides running interference, no strategists discussing optics. Just a family facing the truth. Broken, flawed, and finally unguarded. For Anne, it was grief and guilt. For Charles, regret and revelation. For William and Harry, it was the uncomfortable awakening that even royalty couldn't shield them from emotional reality. This wasn't about media headlines or monarchy preservation anymore. This was about healing, or at least starting to. Charles's complex regret. Charles's tone was tinged with regret, not only for marital breakdown, but for having been trapped by tradition and neglecting the emotional needs of a woman he once vowed to cherish. He admitted his failure, not because of love lost, but because he had failed to fight for happiness when it mattered most. He spoke of a monarchy in need of an emotional revolution, of a family that needed truth as much as forgiveness. His honesty cut both ways, earning sympathy, but also inciting skepticism. Was this a genuine turning point or a calculated gesture? The confession opened a door few expected the monarchy to open, to humanize themselves before the world, embrace vulnerability, and admit that even these bloodlines bleed when broken. It also served as a challenge. Could truth find a place in a world built on tradition? The world reacts. Once King Charles's confession reached the public, the global reaction was immediate and intense. Broadcast channels replayed scenes of Diana's life, emphasizing her warmth and vulnerability. Millions took to social media with hashtags like Justice for Diana and Our Royal Truth, igniting waves of nostalgia, empathy, and outrage. Royal experts pored over archived interviews, extracting moments of doubt and pain that now felt like breadcrumbs leading back to Charles's revelation. Former confidants of Diana finally spoke up. Some described the confession as long overdue vindication. Others remarked on its devastating impact, likening the moment to a reopening of national grief. One commenter, a close friend, said, "It was both a release and a reopening. We all felt the tremors." The public response was mixed. Some saw the confession as brave and healing. Others condemned it as theatrically timed or image-saving. Yet, universally, Diana's legacy was rejuvenated. Decades later, the world remembered more than the princess. They remembered the heartbreak, the battles, and now, this acknowledgement of suffering. This moment wasn't simply royal drama. It was a cathartic surge of collective reckoning. From London to Sydney, people paused to reflect on a life that inspired love and division in equal measure. Interviews and commentary illuminated what many already felt: the human cost of tradition. And so the confession, while personal, became a shared experience, an emotional watershed that reshaped how the world views the monarchy. The shadow of Camilla. Despite Charles's effort not to directly blame Camilla, her presence dominated the conversation. To many, she remained closely tied to Diana's heartbreak. The public memory of a love triangle ran deep, and this confession, with its confession of emotional distance and institutional pressure, only reframed Camilla's role in a more complex light. Was she truly central to the divorce, or merely an accidental symbol? Conspiracy theories began circulating. Some suggested the confession served to reshape Camilla's image, casting the fracture as systemic rather than romantic betrayal. Others believed it was a way for Charles to protect her reputation as they solidified her role within the monarchy. Still, the silence from Camilla's camp generated speculation. Royal commentators noted that if this was damage control, it unfolded in reverse. Instead of quieting a scandal, it reignited it. Camilla now stood at a cultural crossroads, queen consort in title, but contested in public sentiment. Her legacy remained entangled with Diana's. The confession didn't erase long-held impressions, it intensified them. The palace's carefully maintained narrative seemed to unravel further. And in public discourse, Diana's memory once again overshadowed the possibility of Camilla's acceptance. The monarchy, it appeared, could crown someone, but not easily rewrite history. William and Harry's private pain. While the world watched, William and Harry weathered their own emotional storm behind closed doors. Neither made a public statement, but the absence of one spoke volumes. William's public appearances shifted. His laughter dimmed, his posture grew guarded. The cameras caught fleeting moments of sorrow in his eyes. It was as if Charles's words had reopened a wound too deep to fully heal. Harry, known for his emotional transparency, felt beneath the surface but chose distance. In private conversations with friends, he revealed a mixture of relief and heartbreak. His past criticisms of royal tradition now rang true, as if fate affirmed his painful insights. He found validation in the confession, but his relief was tinged with sorrow. The weight of living with suppressed truth, now finally revealed, felt overwhelming. That moment stirred an unexpected unity between the brothers. William's restraint met Harry's openness, yet both shared a profound grief. Their shared experience, being Diana's sons, reignited a bond that long silence never truly severed. Within family texts and hushed calls, they mourned together. This confession reminded them once more, no matter the time, no matter the distance, their mother's love and loss still shaped them. Anne's tearful breakdown. Late in a private reunion room, away from flashing bulbs and royal protocol, Princess Anne lost control. Known for her discipline and professionalism, her sudden burst into tears surprised those who expected her to remain the fortress of duty. The emotional weight of Charles's confession, combined with memories of Diana's suffering, ignited an internal storm. She emerged quietly from the room, eyes glittering with tears, voice barely audible as she told aides, "We could have protected her better." That simple line carried 2 decades of regret and powerlessness. Anne, who had always stood for resilience, now exposed the fracture within. For Diana, she had tried, but the system had refused protection. Anne's departure was silent, yet thunderous. No fanfare, no cameras, just a retreat into grief. This wasn't a public breakdown. It was intimate, raw, and authentic. And in that moment, loyal service transformed into heartbreak. Anne's tears were not weakness, they were testament. A reminder that behind royal composure, vulnerability, and guilt live in quiet corners. Was the palace hiding this all along? As the confession sank in, speculation spread through elite circles. Had senior royals known all along? The public had been fed a narrative of marital discord, scandal, and infidelity. But Charles's words reframed the story. A love undone by emotional suffocation and systemic pressures, not just betrayals. This contradiction cast doubt on everything previously shared. Former aides, speaking anonymously, revealed discussions on limiting Diana's emotional visibility to maintain unity and order. Interview excerpts had been altered, letters suppressed, and compassionate moments airbrushed to protect the institution. If the palace had orchestrated Diana's narrative, it was no longer just political, it was ethical. This shift wasn't subtle. It threatened the monarchy's identity. The world began to question, if such a foundational truth could be concealed, what else remained hidden? The confession wasn't just a personal revelation. It was a mirror held up to the institution, and the glare revealed less compliance than convenience. Amid applause, the monarchy faced its starkest moment since Diana's death. Would it choose image or choose truth? Media analysis and public dissection. As King Charles's emotional revelation echoed across the world, it wasn't just the public that reacted. It was the media machine that exploded. In newsrooms from London to Los Angeles, reporters scrambled to dissect every word, every sentence. What did Charles mean by the real reason? Was this a genuine moment of reflection or a carefully timed PR strategy? The headlines came fast and fierce. Charles confesses all, the Diana truth bomb, and even more blunt ones like too little too late. Royal commentators were torn. Some praised Charles for finally owning up, saying it showed growth and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Others weren't as forgiving. They accused him of using confession as a shield, one that might soften public judgment as his reign continued. Emotional clips of Diana, laughing with her sons, embracing AIDS patients, walking through landmines, flooded social media again. Every moment of her public life was re-examined in this new context. On talk shows, experts revisited old interviews, highlighting contradictions between past and present narratives. Longtime royal reporters brought up hidden diary entries, letters, even moments from the infamous Martin Bashir interview. Everything was fair game now, but perhaps the most telling reactions came from the younger generation. Millennials and Gen Z, many of whom weren't even alive during Diana's peak, now spoke of her as if she were an icon taken before her time. They didn't see Charles's words as closure. They saw them as reopening old wounds. Through it all, the monarchy stood silent. No formal statements, no rebuttals. Just the image of a royal family scrambling behind closed doors, trying to hold it all together, while the world re-examined the past through a sharper, more critical lens. A deeper story about love and power. Underneath all the headlines, behind the palace walls, this wasn't just about one failed marriage. It was about love and the institution that couldn't contain it. Charles's confession peeled back the curtain on a monarchy that demanded duty above all, even above the heart. And in that system, no love story, no matter how true, was safe. Charles may have loved Diana in his own way, and he certainly loved Camilla. But in the end, he didn't fight for either fully. Trapped between expectation and emotion, he let the institution dictate his path. That indecision wasn't just his, it was the monarchy's. A machine so obsessed with image that it lost touch with human feeling. Diana suffered because she wasn't made for that world. She loved too publicly, felt too deeply. And Anne, watching it all unfold from within, carried that pain for years. Her tears now weren't just for her brother or sister-in-law. They were for a system she'd long defended, one that had failed someone she respected, maybe even loved in her own way. This was no longer a story of divorce or scandal. It was a story of emotional cost, the kind of damage done when human lives are forced to play royal roles, when feelings are muted for the sake of tradition, when silence becomes survival. And now, as the confession lingers in the air, the world begins to ask, is the crown worth the sacrifice? If love can't exist freely behind palace gates, then what kind of legacy does that leave? What happens now? In the aftermath of King Charles's revelation, one question hangs heavy in the air. What happens next? The monarchy has been shaken, not by external scandal, but by its own monarch's voice. There are no easy answers, only speculation and unease. Will Princess Anne step forward and speak, breaking the tradition of royal silence? Or will she retreat, allowing her tears to be the only testimony? Royal watchers believe this could redefine her role. Once the steadiest of royals, she may now become the quiet conscience of the firm, proof that even duty can reach its breaking point. What about Charles? Does this moment of honesty redeem him in the eyes of the public? Or does it reignite the fires of resentment? Some believe his words were strategic, a way to reshape his legacy before it's too late. Others see sincerity, a man finally freeing himself from the chains of silence. But either way, his confession changes everything. Camilla, too, must face the consequences. Her place as queen consort, once controversial, is now even more under the microscope. The Diana versus Camilla debate has been revived, and this time, it's louder and more divisive than ever. And then, there's William and Harry. Their response, or lack of it, will define the future of the monarchy. Will they unite behind their mother's memory? Will Harry speak out again, this time with more fire? Will William finally break his royal composure and reveal his inner conflict? One thing is clear. This isn't the end of a chapter. It's the start of something much larger. The monarchy now stands at a crossroads between tradition and transformation. And as the world watches, it's no longer content with fairy tales. It wants truth. It wants accountability. The truth has finally been spoken. But can the crown survive it? As King Charles lifts the veil on the past, the royal family stands at a crossroads. Princess Anne's tears signal more than grief. They reveal guilt, pain, and the deep cracks within the crown. The truth is out now. But one question remains. Can the monarchy survive what comes next?